Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and you know that we are working with COP27, and today we're going to discuss on climate actions. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. David Schumacher, Mr. David Smith, Mr. Rob, Mr. Sharidan Tatsuno, and Mr. Ching. First, I would like to give chance Mr. David Schumacher.
Yeah, hello, Sharif. So the topic today, COP27, climate action. So in case people aren't aware what COP27 is, that's part of a series of United Nation conference change or climate change conferences. And the COP part stands for Conference of Parties. So bringing people together to work these issues. COP27 itself is actually scheduled for 6 through, was scheduled for 18 November. Of course, that puts us with it going on still yet today. By the way, if you're like me, any of the previous versions of this, I've only read secondhand reports of what's been going on. You can go out to the United Nations website and find a link, and I can put it in the comments here for Sharif to share if he wishes. And you can actually watch the different proceedings and stuff as they go along. I think that might be interesting to some. It's occurring in Egypt, a different place each time, bringing world leaders, thought leaders together to work these issues. The climate action proposals are divided up into a number of different categories: energy, industry and transportation, business and finance, resilience and adaptation, nature-based solutions, and urban planning. Those are the ones listed. Of particular interest to me are the areas of energy and resilience and adaptation. I would imagine that there would be different experts interested in different areas that they can bring ideas and movement to the table, and they're all interrelated, so one area affects another, obviously. For example, energy and business and finance would certainly have an interplay. Business and finance certainly would have an interplay with all of them. So something to consider. There's some great places that you can go to educate yourself. Just quickly, what I want to say about energy is I think there's been good emphasis put on accelerating the adoption of renewable energies. There's lots of conversation on different sides of that issue as to how effective they can be, what the costs are long-term as well as immediate relief short-term, and you're always going to hear what a small part of the total solution that renewables are. And that's the reason for the emphasis on acceleration. But I also want to point out, and I didn't see it on the UN website, is a part that fourth generation nuclear, I think, should be playing in this. I think when we do everything that we can do energy-wise with renewables, reduction to cleaner forms of energy, nothing's perfect, moving from the various levels of petrochemicals that become cleaner, if you wish to call it that, as you go. Those are great, but we really can't get to where we want to be with the climate change goals, in my opinion, without looking at fourth generation nuclear. We've talked about that on previous shows. I can provide some information on what fourth generation nuclear is without rehashing that. And then usually the safety details come up, and I can provide information on that if that's necessary. The other thing is, it's kind of almost the flip side of that, which is resilience and adaptation. We are having warming. How do we adapt to that? How do we make the facilities that we have more resilient to changes that we can forecast? Modeling, whether it's done by AI or however it's done, can help identify what those issues are and which are the best ones to remediate. Clear examples would be old style nuclear power plants that were built close to water sources to help with cooling and so forth. Well, if climate change models predict that that particular area is going to have higher tides, then certainly resilience planning is necessary for that area to maintain protection. So they all work together. This conference is good from a talking standpoint, but what we're talking about is climate action. And action, in my opinion, also takes political will, education of the public, and adaptation and buy-in from all different parts of the economy. So there's a lot to talk about here this morning. I painted a real broad picture. Yeah, I'll leave it at that, and we'll see how others wish to fill in.
Thank you. Mr. David Smith.
Sharif, thank you. There, as David said, a lot happening on there, and we see areas set up. One of the promising things to me that I saw in the early parts of COP27 on the whole climate action area is there was a climate action innovation zone that got set up there. And as a result of COP27. And this purposely built innovation zone will connect national governments with cities, regions, business, and investors to try to accelerate the delivery of a stronger and a much more ambitious climate action. The climate action set up in innovation zone in Egypt is right outside the blue zone, and together they're looking at how to maximize really multiple stakeholder type of engagement. And there will be really, I hate the term, but state-of-the-art demonstrative technology there. And there will be some technology deployed throughout COP27 and the different zones which are up there, the green zone and the blue zone and others, to facilitate collaboration. And I believe this type of collaboration, as you heard me say, is, I believe, very important to go ahead and try to solve this type of large system of systems problem. The other thing that I find interesting is with the United States in attendance at COP27, the United States just recently ratified the KGAL amendment to the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. And this had not been done prior to that. And so this action going into that and working into it. The other thing I find is interesting is that there is considerable focus in this COP27 on developing nations, and particularly in this session on Africa, because if you look at what's happening today in the area in the developing nations, 17 of the world's 20 most climate vulnerable countries are in Africa. And part of the announcements that President Biden from the United States made during COP was that he has announced further U.S. climate adaptation investments on the African continent as well, too. And he is committed to trying to set up an early warning system to improve access for disaster insurance for countries and farmers. And this is part of what the U.S. agenda has been during COP27 and trying to go further with it. But there's just so much action going in there, a lot of financing, a lot of waste management activity, a lot of resilience. Another big area in COP27 is the way to try to move from insight from demonstrations, scaling to full action. Earlier, a lot of the activities at the various COPs were, let's put policy in place. Let's do the elements we think that are necessary to succeed. But if you just begin to look at the schedule of COP, and I will post that in the comments also, Sharif, if you want to share that on the other side. The issues are broad in COP27, and the climate action, when you look at the elements, are in about a dozen categories. And I'm anxious to see if after this meeting finally breaks up and we see each of the delegates go back to their home countries, what action will be taken in each of those home countries, because that's the key again to having something happen here. It's great to talk about, it's great to vote and put things in place, but that has to translate into action, and that has to translate into global action. So Sharif, my opening comments.
Thank you, Mr. David Smith. Mr. Rob.
So as I watch this latest environmental effort, I continue to be concerned about the lack of focus. As we look at the coverage area of COP27, we see that it's moving into affirmative action, gender equality, biodiversity. Those are all important movements in and of themselves. But if you're trying to save the planet from burning itself up, they probably should have their own individual initiatives and allow COP27 to focus predominantly on stopping the climate crisis that we have. Because you can stop that and you've got a lot of time to fix the other things. If you don't stop that, we don't have time to fix the other things. And this lack of focus is resulting in some, at least what I think, ugly decisions. For instance, all over COP27's page is wind power. The problem with wind power is it's not 24/7. It tends to generate from early afternoon into early evening, and then the rest of the day not so much. And depending on where you are, you might not have enough wind to move a turbine. So with wind power comes an underlying requirement for storage, and what we don't focus on is the problem, which is storage. If you're going to go to solar or wind, you have to have a storage solution because neither one of those things generate 24/7. You can talk about nuclear. The problem with nuclear is, what do you do with a spent fuel? Nobody wants it. Now, it's a lot cleaner than petrochemical, but if you can't find a place to put the fuel, you still have a problem that you have to solve, that you're ignoring. Here in the United States, it's been a huge problem because pretty much every place they've decided to put a nuclear fuel storage facility, the local citizens say absolutely not, and it doesn't either get finished or started. So the problem doesn't go away, yet we still walk forward with this idea, okay, well, nuclear power is going to fix it. Well, not unless you fix the storage problem. Geothermal looks really promising in terms of the fact that it doesn't seem to do a whole lot of collateral damage, and it does run 24/7, but it's very expensive. But it may be, in fact, the most viable because it contains the cost that it generates. So when we talk about wind and solar, both of them have side impacts. Wind for a long time had the disposal of the blades as a side impact as well because they were not recyclable. That's been fixed of late, but that was a huge problem. Another problem with wind. Solar uses a lot of components that don't degrade well in the soil, and if you do go to batteries, we're talking lithium ion at this point, which is kind of ugly to mine and even uglier to get rid of. So better than what we had before, but not yet ideal unless you can fix the underlying issues. You're basically trading off one problem for another lesser one, but the goal should be to trade off one problem for no other problems, and we aren't there yet. So looking at the overall proposals, my view is we're not being really good about thinking through the implications of what we're doing. I mean, it troubles me to a great deal that large portions of the rainforest are being destroyed to mine nickel at the moment. And of course, nickel's being used as we move to these alternative forms of energy in a large degree. The electric car industry apparently is using a lot of this stuff. And so it makes no sense to say, okay, we're going to go electric, but we're going to destroy a good chunk of the rainforest to get there. maybe that destroy the rainforest part is something we ought to think about. And yet that doesn't seem to be the case. So here I think the need really is to focus. Biodiversity is certainly important, but I think that should be its own effort. Equal opportunity, incredibly important. Having advancing gender equality is a major effort that should occur in every single country, but it shouldn't be blended in with saving the environment. It creates too many moving parts. What's your focus then? Is an effort that isn't biodiverse or isn't gender neutral? Is that effort going to be discounted, even though it might be more effective to save the environment against one that meets those underlying requirements? And so you put in so many barriers to getting the job done. But that my worry is we don't get the job done. Everybody at the end of the day points at each other and says it's your fault, and we now have an uninhabitable planet. So that's my concern as we watch this. Is it needs a lot more focus in my opinion, and we need to start really putting resources on the areas where we've got the gore points. We shouldn't be tearing up rainforest to save the environment. That makes no friggin' sense to me. That we need to work on and fund a much heavier battery and energy storage technology. We are funding to a degree that's almost unprecedented at this moment. That's only because we kind of ignored the whole thing for about 60 years after electric cars first failed in the market. So we've got a lot to make up for. So as we look at this, it shouldn't be a case we're looking at a list of requirements like they're multiple choice. It's all of the above. To fix the environment, we have to solve the storage problem, whether it's energy storage or nuclear rod storage. That's got to be solved. It's on the critical path. We don't necessarily need to focus on these other items as a requirement for saving the environment. They should have their own initiatives and their own focus. That way, with focus, there's a higher likelihood you'll get all of them done. With a lack of focus, there's a higher likelihood maybe none of them get well done, and everybody points their fingers at each other and says it's your fault. I'd like to avoid that. So my view is while I appreciate the efforts that COP provides, I really think it needs a ton more focus than it's got, and it's starting to really get into areas that I think each should enjoy their own focus and requirements and not degrade from what is a critical path effort to fix the environment and save the planet. And Sharif is frozen. Sheridan, I believe you're up.
All right, very good. Hello, Sheridan Tatsuno from San Francisco. I'm an urban and environmental planner by training. And during the late 70s, after the OPEC crisis, I worked on energy projects for Bechtel, the biggest corporation in the world for construction. I worked at geotech companies. I worked on plans for nuclear power, uranium mining. So I understand the nuclear industry and the long, dirty supply chain. I did the site selection land use planning for the Department of Energy's oil reserves back in 1978. I did the solar rights plan for San Bernardino County in California, so I understand solar. I worked with all the oil boys, Exxon and all those guys back in the 70s, and so I understand the energy industry and how they think. It's in one of the challenges. They supply 80% of all our energy, fossil fuels. So it goes back hundreds of years, going way back. Here's kind of the way I look at it. When I look at COP27, it reminds me when I worked at Stanford. We have all these brilliant people. They're really smart. It's more like a university. It's an academy. If you want to learn about climate action and principles and theories and science, it's the perfect university. But like Stanford, I worked there. They're elite. They're out of touch with reality. They only focus on theory and policy, but they don't actually do it on the ground like I had to. I worked with the construction companies and we actually implement. So as an urban planner, I focus on action 95%, not talk 95%. So COP is 95% talk. Now, the other problem in the COP, is that in urban planning, we know that best innovation starts in the grassroots, local communities, farmers, small town, and construction people, families. And urban planners, we find it the fastest innovation, and it's happening now already at the local level, and it moves up. The best ideas move toward the top, and the national governments and the international are the last people to adopt it. It takes 5 to 20 years. So the way I look at it, the COP people probably wake up around 2035 or 40 on what people are doing on the ground today. It's too late. So I kind of nodding for two reasons. I'm not listening to the COP people. They're good academics and theorists. I'm looking to people on the ground, and I think we need to empower these people now. So the other thing too is that the national leaders are compromised by big oil. That's what, and then they're basically supply side. They're trying to push supply, which is big oil. The cities and the towns and the bioregions are on the demand side. So I think we need to shift from supply side economics to demand side. What I mean by that is that cities, towns consume 80% of energy. They emit 70% of carbon. Ergo, we will win or lose the carbon battles in the cities and towns around the world. On the demand side, they also buy energy and set the rules for zoning, for use of energy. So if we had OPEC, which is a supply side cartel, we theoretically could have all the cities in the bioregions set their own buyers cartel. And at that point, they would influence, if they wanted to, Wall Street in one day, just as OPEC's oil shock sent ripples through the global economy. So I wrote a book, and you can take a look at it. It's called The Capitalist Strategy. So what I tried to do is say, well, based on the global economics, what's the fastest way to decarbonization? And so I said, let the cities lead. The C40 is already organized. And my proposal is that you have the C40 leads all 10,000 cities, which is like 95% of carbon use, energy use. In the next 8 years, set up the whole point, use exponential technologies we have, we do real time, VR, AI, IoT sensors, blah, 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 the cloud, quantum, whatever you want. But set up the framework and the collaboration to actually implement, because I'm a planner. I focus on action, not talk. And I think we'll be hearing COP talk for the rest of their lives. And they're not responsible. Now, one thing good about the cities is they're close to the citizens. If you are a mayor and you ignore your citizens, you are voted out of office. And so I can see whereas the national and international leaders are not accountable because they're so far removed from the average person. So I think and the good part is that if citizens work together with the mayors and the city councils and the local agencies to determine their own green policies, procurement, energy use, storage, transit, everything, we can see rapid action because they move very quickly. I'm impressed by local towns and villages, especially in the red states. I mean, one thing people don't realize is that Texas, Oklahoma were the fastest adopters of solar back in the last 10 years. I talked to people in Houston. They said, oh, yeah, there's no jobs in oil during the crash. We're all going to solar right now. So a lot of people overlook red states and thinking they're all big oil, but they're not. They're really pragmatic people. They move really fast. They know how to build. And they are common sense. And so I think that really is the way we're going to move quickly. And I think if we do it right, we could do it. We could set up the framework. We're not going to implement it. It'll take 20 to 30 years to implement. But we could set up the roadmap in detail at the regional levels. And then all the cities can share in real time on cloud. So we have a chance. And now, this isn't a pipe dream. I did this 30 years ago. Okay, I'll be frank. I wrote a book called Technopolis Strategy when Japan, this Prentice Hall, it's kind of out of date though. Prentice Hall, 1986. And I wrote, and Japan set up 26 tech cities to try to catch up Silicon Valley, and then national strategy be implemented and funded locally. When I wrote the book, guess who was the fastest adopter? China. I spoke with the ambassador from the UN to Silicon Valley, and he said, oh, I already read your book in Chinese. I said, what do you mean? It's in English. He goes, oh, it's pirated. You're famous in Beijing and all the cities in China because we're building tech cities right now using your book because we're copying Japan. I said, why Japan? He goes, well, because they prove that you can develop advanced technology and still keep your Asian values. I said, okay, got it. Austin, Texas moved the fastest in the United States. The Austin Miracle, I was part of that. We had the first Technopolis conference, and then the International Association of Science Parks. The the head said, oh, there's 1,000 tech parks going up during the 90s. They're all reading your book. That was, so basically, we learned very quickly in the 90s that the cities and states can move really fast because it's all about job creation and saving their economies. So I think this time it's one of the challenges, what are the new jobs, obviously. So I think, and if you look at COP, basically they give you the whole roadmap there. I mean, in terms of, energy, regenerative agriculture, green energy storage, blah, blah, blah. And you can take any technology and you can build a roadmap locally. So I think we already know what policies and technologies we can use. The challenge is at the local level, how do you implement it as a community working with your cities? So it's not either or, but rather the city and corporations top down locally with the citizens, grassroots bottom up. And I think if you do that, then we could see cities move really fast. My goal is, hopefully 10,000 cities will implement in the next 5 years. And then we have a chance. But that's kind of the way I look at it. Again, action. Right now, the science is decided. COP provides all the details, and IPCC. What we need now is really 98% action, actually implementing on the ground, for real, and no more just talking. And then once I see that, then I know that people are serious. But actually, I think the cities and mayors, they can act with, regardless of COP, and just look at COP as like a Stanford University for good idea. That's it. But thank you very much. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Professor Sharidan Tatsuno, actually this point, if we define, yes, action is important. And yes, I'm from Dhaka. You know that already we are working with Central Bank Bangladesh, those who actually working on sustainable finance, 25 banks. Recently we are working, they are also working on sustainable finance. World Talent Economy Forum taking some responsibilities. But things is that what actually Professor Rob trying to share, this is the reality from this kind of COP27 or this kind of big forum, emerging economy like Bangladesh or Malaysia or Nepal or Bhutan, where we are representing, they do not get actually enough support, funding, uh, nothing. Trust me, nothing. This is not actually even it's not actually helpful for our local community. How come you say that this kind of COP27 and other things will be helpful for emerging economy? I don't know. Actually, there are a lot of questions. Local entrepreneurs, they are frustrated about the international markets, international funding, donor agencies. Yes, with their local capacity. Let's say our World Talent Economy Forum. 100% we are growing all of our action, what you are talking about, with our local ecosystem. We never get any single, yes, those who are joining as a volunteer basis, this is we respect, but financially or anything, we never get support.
Okay, I dealt with the Global South 30 years ago. I worked with Bangalore. I was the only non-Indian Silicon Valley to connect Silicon Valley to Bangalore. They only had one tech manager there. Okay, they didn't have, and I said, what's the problem? He goes, we have no money, no support from the north, nothing. Exactly what you said. And they said, the only thing we have is smart people, a lot of smart engineers and programmers. So do you think we can succeed? I said, how badly do you want to succeed? And he said, very, very badly. I said, look, if you people work together instead of arguing and fighting all the time locally, because in Silicon Valley, we focus. We don't like all this arguing and stuff politically. If you focus and work together, public-private partnership, and work with us, we could connect you and bring Silicon Valley investment software into Bangalore, and we did that, 1984. And it took 10 years. Today, you could do it probably in a year or two because it's online. We were using fax machines back then. So I think, one of the challenges I see is that the Global South kind of has this beggar mentality all the time. And I don't think that's a very positive attitude. I think like Bangalore, they said, no, we're going to take charge of our own future, work with us to do it. And they actually organized. They had the consul generals in Silicon Valley. It was like really close, the top ministries, the mayor, everybody in Bangalore. And it was easy to work with Bangalore. It and they were off the radar. We didn't even hear of India back in the 80s, China either. So I think the key is that we could see how, if the cities want to, they can, if they want to, like Bangalore, and then they should just study Bangalore and talk to them for ideas on how you mobilize your local people and organize. Because remember, they had no money either back then. Now they do. Because, see, back then they had nothing. All right, so just to let you know, so I think you have to be careful about. Now, today, you have all this ESG fund, $120 trillion is sitting there because of greenwashing. So I think we need new infrastructure, new systems, like we're talking about climate banks, maybe working with the New York and the top people and investors in New York and London, and then city offices throughout Global South, like the World Bank did after World War II, and then funnel some of that $120 trillion into projects in the Global South through the banks. I mean, and with climate action at the local level, I think, but that requires a lot of creative thinking in banking and policy and among cities. I mean, it's a whole new infrastructure. It doesn't exist right now. Otherwise, we would see 50 trillion going to the Global South. So yeah, it's not, the money is there, the banking infrastructure is there, if you want, but there's no initiative, from what I can say.
Yeah, Professor, I just want to share, because I do more work with grassroots level people. Actually, when we discuss about mega projects and all of the COP26 and COP27 and all of the other things, mega projects and mega things happens. And most of the cases, I'm sorry, but this is happening in the developing world, or many things is corruptions and everything, but nobody care about micro initiative, small initiative, grassroots level people. They have different problems. We can engage with them. But I'm sorry, I do not think that this kind of mega projects, billions and $trillion concept, it's not helpful at all. Just an example, let's say Dr. Muhammad Yunus in COP27, he request all of the global community, anyhow, we have to stop this Ukraine and Russia war because of these economical challenging situations. But the big country, they are not concerned about this war, or I don't know, they're not concerned about the present situation. In anyhow, if we want economical sustainability, even if we want climate actions or COP27 successful, definitely this war is problem. Let's say country like Bangladesh, we have energy problem because of this war. We have food security problem. I know many countries right now have food security problem because of this war. We have healthcare problems. Many things actually happening. So I don't know how actually the global communities with the billions and $1 trillion concept, they will solve this problem, but I think that the global leader, they need to more focus on grassroots level people, especially the emerging economy. I think this is absent in the open dialogue and everything.
That's where the technology is. Okay, so my company, we're a German company, but we're going into Africa right now. We use a mobile first, because everybody's got mobile. We use AI avatars for the last 5 years. We're doing VR, but mostly AI. So basically, you're talking about a personalized mobile climate financing for individuals, where it's a mobile only with micro loans. So but using exponential technologies. I mean, the micro loan goes back decades, but it's really old fashioned, too paper and people intensive. You could do most of it with AI nowadays, and yet microloans of $1 even. That would be simple to do for a mobile app developer. So it's not, the technology is already there. I mean, it's been there for the last 10 years, 5 years actually. But what's missing is that the COP people, it seems like they're totally oblivious to what's going on in Silicon Valley, in the tech world, in India and China. I mean, all these, India and China, they're really advanced ahead of the US in terms of mobile stuff. And so you could just immediately, you could reach 5 billion, 3 or 4 billion people just using phones right now on a cloud. I mean, I don't know why nobody does that, but that's the first thing they should be doing to get. So, let's say a dollar loan even, or $10 loans, micro loans, that'd be easy to do online. I mean, so I don't know. That's why I think we need to move into this decade and stop thinking like 1990s in terms of microloans and everything. We need to use the exponential technologies, and that's where Silicon Valley and India, China, are in Europe. They're all leading right now in that area. So it's there. It's just I don't know why nobody's using it.
Excellent. Professor Sharidan Tatsun, actually, our audience, we have a lot of entrepreneurs, especially social entrepreneurs. So any of the good idea, any speaker says, you can communicate with us. We are developing lab, many lab, millions of people and students, the youth communities. They are actually engaging with World Talent Economy Forum. I just want to share one of our action. Because World Talent Economy Forum, we are, according to our commitment, we are helping our youth communities. There are many youth people like this, many. Regularly, we are supporting. Regularly, we have our 10 different campus. From 10 different campus, we are engaging with around 10 million people. We are actually growing an ecosystem, definitely with our own fund, with our local entrepreneurs, and we are growing the ecosystem. But if you have a good technology, if you have a good solution, if you want to develop the entrepreneurial ecosystem, any good idea, we are open, because we have many young people. I think young and talented people, they are more creative, they are more positive, and they want to take action. I want to do work based on the young and youth communities. I think we are open for any good idea and any good technology. Thank you, Mr. Sharidan Tatsuno, for your excellent analysis. Professor Ching, what you want to add to today's discussion?
Oh, hi, Sheridan. Welcome. And I agree with Sheridan. You see, I'm for the underground climatologists who are independent of the government or the oil companies. And they have more views than all the other people. Okay, I recommend, people should take at both sides. Okay, first, we need a complete picture of climate change. Okay, I did some survey. Okay, climate change is still an unsolved problem. There are still some hidden elements to be discovered by new innovations. So the formal weather simulation program cannot give us an accurate description of the weather, of the climate. Where I would like to see anybody who can find the climate simulation program that can even tell the current climate changes. Okay, the second thing is that COP27 has so far doing the same thing over and over as some of the people who have experience about COP. Okay. And, some guests such as Dr. Hassan Musa, he keep talking, we had some session, he keep talking about innovations. And it looks like, in my opinion, the solution is innovation. Okay, we need to innovate. We need to have a new way of thinking for this climate change. As I said, the problem hasn't been solved. So also for my own interest is my suggestion is that funding innovation need the infinite spreadsheet to include long-term as well as short-term, and the non-monetary as well as monetary returns. And basically, reality, as I said before, reality consists of nature and man, both of which can change reality. Competition is still the engine of progress. We complain about wars, but pain and suffering are the way nature teaches man about non-verbal laws of nature of reality. So far, nature is way ahead of man in all aspects of solutions. Okay, nature solved the invisible hand. And so far, the invisible hand seems to be working best in the capitalist society to stop, to alter the course of the economy so that we have a more stable economy. People want to surpass the invisible hand, like in the communist country, they are doing worse. And our suggestion of the invisible hand, of the infinite space, mainly to make the invisible hand visible, so that we can keep the range of possibility within the range of tolerance, so there will not be any more market crash. Okay, and finally, I like to point out a few things I view from the overall picture of the climate change. That is, solar and wind, they are very weak. Okay, if you look at people who try to give the overall picture, solar and wind are very weak, and we eventually still need something with more power, such as fossil. Okay, that is something we're against. In terms of fossil, United States has improved its climate better than anybody else, not its climate, but its pollution with shale gas, okay, which produce 50% less CO2. And all these things, U.S. has almost, you can say, almost have everything. It's a country most fortunate on earth. We got everything: shale gas, shale oil. But shale oil has the problem of contaminate groundwater. So it's being questioned whether it's, there's pro and con regarding shale oil. And people should check into that. In my own opinion, as a person who formerly trained as a plasma control fusion specialist, I got my PhD in plasma control fusion. I believe fusion reactor will play a necessary part of climate change on the long-term basis, because it will produce so much heat. It will balance the coming ice age. Okay, throughout history, people worry more about cooling, global cooling, rather than global warming. And also, another thing Dr. Sharif would try to point out about Bangladesh. Okay, if you look at the overall picture, some countries like Russia, Canada especially, also joined in by China and the United States. Global warming is improving the farmland in China and Russia. Okay, it's not being reported, but because it's just starting to show the effect. Okay, Bill Gates has bought a lot of farmland in the U.S. and he thinks there's going to be famine, crisis, food crisis. But he might be surprised by the climate. Okay, human against nature. Okay, you can bet on nature probably most of the time to win. So the fusion reactor, regardless of what happens, fusion reactor will counteract the cyclical ice age, which comes around because the Earth tilts every 40,000 years. So we do need to look at long term. And since we're talking about COP27, they are concluding partial conclusion on this. The conclusion, they will have $100 billion. But most people will look at the short-term return. That is, they want to use this money mostly for debt relief programs. not for innovation. Okay? Innovation, long-term, that really program short-term. Okay, they have short-term program they want to solve. So there's problems, to overcome if you look at a piece at a time. Okay, so we need to look at the whole picture. I appreciate Sheridan come in. I always expect him to come in every session, but no, you're finally here. That's good. Have an expert come to us, and I'm glad I'm learning a great deal from this. Okay, so thank you for pointing this out, and it's a problem that's not going to leave us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David Schumacher.
Tremendous set of guests that you have this morning with their insights. I appreciate, I've learned something from each one of them. Just quickly, not covering it all, I want to say thanks to Rob for talking about focus. I think that's very important, and I think it plays into the local political aspects of it too. When you digress to side issues, take your eye off the ball, so to speak, I think that allows political friction to develop. For example, well, I won't give examples, but it does. I like Sheridan's focus on practical answers, especially with cities taking the lead. And I really like that idea of a cities cartel, if you will. And I can see how that can help with the developing nations as well, because I think maybe you start with the major cities. I haven't read your book, Sheridan, so pardon me. And I look for feedback. But I would think start with the major cities worldwide. This is a worldwide problem. And that cartel can perhaps help cities that are in lesser developed countries connect to the right resources that they need to and bring an effort on this demand side. I think that's clearly a brilliant solution. I agree with Hugh as far as innovation. I think innovation is needed all the way through here, but the key idea being focused on new ideas and new technologies. Innovation's become a buzzword, and we need to not think of the buzzword aspect of it, but think of taking and applying new thought into areas that we've tried over and over, as he points out, and really haven't gotten anywhere. I think all those things can really help. I think this is something that I've learned from, and I'm anxious to hear more.
Thank you. Mr. David Smith.
So many good speakers, like has been said many times. The climate actions are necessary to move forward on, as has been said, and there's been so many good ideas put on the table. I also want to say that I agree with Rob. We need more focus. There are so many other issues that are coming up under the disguise here, and it's kind of like the piling on we see that happens in the U.S. Congress on major appropriation bills, where dozens or hundreds of other issues get embedded into a big bill. And that's kind of what's happening at COP27 as well. Going back to the underliers, though, on COP27 with climate action, is the smaller developing nations do not have the finances for meaningful action. That's one of the things that, if this goes from talk towards action, that should be there. Just from perusing the program, looking at the different pieces, the broadness of the challenge dealing with sustainable climate action is really very big and daunting. And it's something that needs to be handled very effectively. So my hope on this is that, like many of the prior COPs, which were just talking and debating and passing resolutions, my hope for this COP is that it leads to action and global action that's necessary to address this problem. And that not only will it happen with the people who are the actions, but much like what Sheraton talked about with the early Technopolis conferences we had here in Austin and Sheraton, I was at that conference you were talking about as well, is that we use that opportunity to combine across the Technopolis, the academics, the government, the big companies, the small companies, the entrepreneurs, to create the change actions that are necessary to change not only the technologies, not only the regulations, but the cultural changes that are necessary to be effective here. So, Dr. Sharif, that's my closing.
Thank you. Professor Rob.
I'll be pretty brief because I would drop here in a minute to do a radio program. As I was pointing out before, I think the critical issue right now is we're avoiding the problems related to energy storage, and we shouldn't be. To give you an example, recent reports have indicated that by 2030, if all of the lithium mines that are both in operation and proposed are operating at full capacity, which is unlikely, but if they're operating at full capacity, we'll have 50% of the lithium we're going to need in 2030. 50%. We can't make the batteries if we don't have the lithium, and so we either need to move from lithium ion, or we need to increase dramatically our mining of lithium. Otherwise, we're going to fall far short. By the way, this was just recently covered in an article where Canada's opening up a lithium mine, but we're just so far short in terms of mining capacity at the moment that it's going to create huge problems. And we use lithium ion not only to power electric cars, but as backup for off-grid homes as well. So that it just performs quite a bit better than lead acid, and it is the preferred method for that as well. So as we go to distributed power and solar, if we don't have enough batteries, that doesn't really work for us either. So in the end, as we look at these underlying problems, we need to look at it in a holistic fashion. What are the elements that need to be in place, and are they all there? Are we creating more problems than we're solving in the approach that we're taking? And finally, if we're going to get the entire industry to move, maybe part of that movement needs to be to make sure that whatever industry we're displacing is kept whole. While I'm a big believer in the Star Trek episode where Spock says the needs of the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. The fact is the few get a vote, and it's often the case as we move this stuff forward, we're going to penalize the hell out of the industries we're displacing and not keep them whole, and that means they're going to fight and fund the fight against what is we're trying to accomplish, and that just creates friction and drag. So in the end, focus on the goal. Make sure we cover every element that needs to be covered on the critical path, which includes energy storage or spent fuel rod storage and disposal or whatever, but all of them have to be taken care of. And finally, make sure the people that we're destroying as part of this are kept at least marginally whole so they don't throw their bodies at the effort. In the end, we can get this done. Otherwise, it just becomes, as Sheridan pointed out, a lot of people talking and not a lot of progress. Until next time.
Thank you. Professor Sheridan Tatsuno, what's your concluding remarks?
Okay, just two things. One is actually with the layoffs in tech, it's really a good thing. Web 2.0 is over all the tech giants, and we're moving to the next phase. It's not here yet, Web 3.0 and all the exponential technologies. So right now in Silicon Valley, climate tech is the number one hot sector. A lot of people are moving in there because they see the future coming. So that's good. So we're going to get a lot of talent from tech going into the biotech and climate tech. The second is that we need a good energy transition for the big oil and gas and coal people. I mean, basically they're selling a commodity. It's volatile. That's a lousy business. It's like being a Chinese PC clone maker. I think all the companies, if they want to, with government help, can shift to being what I call smart, clean, renewable energy suppliers. Okay. And then like Uber, they don't have to own everything. They could just provide the smarts, and basically the smart grids, the exponential technologies, and provide the energy without having to own all the infrastructure. Okay, so Uber taught us a long time ago you don't have to own the cab to do the business. And I think if the energy companies are smart, they're going to look more like Apple Computer where they own a little bit of hardware, but they really make their money on services, software, and the other, and financing. And they're not a Chinese clone, which is just hardware only, which is a crappy business to be in. So that's what I think could happen. And I think, the top companies can pull it off. And the good part is they have all the engineering too, and they know how to pull it off. I mean, I worked at Bechtel with these guys. They're really smart. And the people in Texas, hands down, some of the smartest energy people I've ever met out of Houston and Denver. So, they've already pioneered solar already and wind faster than the rest of the US. They're ahead of California. So, I really look forward to their transition. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Ching, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Okay. My very long associate, Patrick Freeman, is working on charter cities, just like Sheridan proposed. Our associate went back to 1984 when I first called Rose Freeman, Patrick's grandmother. They have a long relationship with the Freemans. Both Sheridan and Patrick are for studying the cities. I have an alternative way about to start with the next new world. Okay, this smart city is a good way to do it, but my view is the next new world. America is the current new world, and they're starting to completely dominate the world. But America has proven to be a leader which is unable to solve any of the crises, including financial crisis, health crisis, climate crisis, etc. The next new world will collect all the innovative thinkers in one place, such as Taiwan or England. Okay, the government must fund all the thinkers, and it will build a next new world in the fashion of Taiwan, which has achieved this, demonstrated this in the 1970s by my mentor, K.T. Lee, and who created Taiwan economic miracle and also the factory, the world factory in China. Okay, so we need to follow this example. Even in the US in the 1960s, Kennedy started to fund all the scientists with unlimited funding. Anybody ask for money, they'll get it. Because of the Sputnik, they try to catch up with Russia. And today we have all this internet, microprocessor, and the other things all come from that decade. Okay, the politicians do not think, innovation is what's good for them, getting votes. But I'm still trying to see if we can do it. The main thing that at least we can do is we can push the current scientific age into an age of social science, so we can make rational decisions at least. Okay, this cannot be done with all the lawyers and the things in the U.S. Okay, this is my conclusion. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is economy for of action. What tomorrow we have our another new dialogues, and I request all of our audience, please share our content with your government agency, corporation, and academy, and from our speakers, those who want to work with World Talent Forum.
voice is broken up.
See, and join.
Sheriff, your voice is broken up. By the way, China and Russia like to have global warming, but the Bangladesh is actually sinking into the ocean with global warming. So this, Bangladesh really dislike global warming. So Bangladesh need to look at that point. They got two competitors who are huge, Canada and Russia, for global warming. So that's a strange point. Yeah, Sharon, you should come to join up with us. Look at the utopias, creating utopias. Then from the utopias, we put them together to create the next new world. Yeah, let the government fund it and will also benefit from it. England sent a representative to Taiwan. So these two countries, which are desperate, they are very, inspired by crisis. Okay, Sheridan, watch out for Bangladesh. Don't let it sink.
Oh, thank you everyone for joining today's session. Thank you, bye bye, and take care.
Okay, bye. Yeah.